Okay, so this will be the start of a new notebook. And if you did not hand in the other notebook after the test, remember you need to get that handed in. Okay, so this will be for section 6.1 on operations on functions. And key word in that title is function. Remember, graphically, if it's a function, it passes the vertical line test. No 2 points line up and down. Okay, the first thing the author does is goes through the different operations, and I'm going to do it by an example. Say you're given a function f of x is 3x squared plus 7x. F of x is 3x squared plus 7x. And you're given another function, and they can use whatever letters. Most of the time they're going to use the letters G, F, and G. Sometimes they'll use H. G of x is another function. And both of these, if you look at them, they're quadratic functions. They're both going to graph parabolas. Okay? But they will ask you to find we're going to look at all 4 operations, and in the directions it asks you to find f plus g of x. And look at how that's written, where the parentheses are. Okay, so they're basically asking you to add those 2 functions together, and they're asking for f minus g of x. So they're asking you to subtract. So we're going to work those 2 separately. So f plus g of x. So they're just wanting you to add those 2 functions. So 3x squared plus 7x plus 2x squared minus x minus 1. So combine like terms. Combine the ones that have the same variable, same exponent. You do have to look at the sign in front. So we'd end up with 5x squared. Remember, when you add apples to apples, you get apples back. So that exponent's not changing. And then look at the 7x and the minus x. So that'd be plus 6x. And then minus 1's all by itself. So 5x squared plus 6x minus 1. You agree with that? Check my arithmetic. Okay, and then they will ask you to take the difference of those 2 functions, f minus g of x. So, and it has to be in the order that it's written, because subtraction is not commutative. Okay, so you put the 3x, because the f is first, you put the 3x squared plus 7x, and then minus the g of x. So make sure you put parentheses around that. So it's basically, here's your f minus g. And you can distribute that negative sign, or you can change all the signs inside and then add. It depends on how you learned it. So you can distribute that negative sign and say this would be 3x squared plus 7x. Negative times a positive would be a negative 2x squared. Negative times a negative would be a positive x. Negative times a negative would be a positive 1. And then combine like terms. Okay, 3x squared minus 2x squared would just be x squared. 7x plus x would be plus 8x. And then plus 1. You agree with that? Okay. So that's 2 operations. Okay. Let's do 2 more. Another example. Change our functions. Say you're given f of x is 3x squared minus 2x plus 1, and g of x is x minus 4. So I'm changing the 2 functions on this one. Okay. And first, if they ask you to find the product, f times g of x. Okay, so you're just going to multiply them, but write them out so that you can see, and you're going to multiply. Now, it's okay if you can take everything in the first one times the second one, or you can take everything in the second one times the first one. A lot of times on this, if there's 2 on this, they'll go this way. Okay, so when you multiply that out, that'll give you 3x squared minus, no, that's cubed, isn't it? Sorry, that's my fault. Cubed minus 2x squared, right? Plus x, and then multiply the 4, negative 4 times everything, so you'd have negative 12x squared, check my arithmetic, plus 8x minus 4. You agree with that so far? Okay, and then combine those. This is the only cube term, 3x cubed. We can combine this one with this one with negative 14x squared. Combine this one with this one, 9x, and then minus 4. So I get 3x cubed minus 14x squared plus 9x minus 4. Good with that? Okay, and then the last one, they do, sorry, this isn't a new number. They do another operation. They ask you to find f divided by g of x. So the f function would be 3x squared minus 2x plus 1, and it's all over x minus 4. And I will tell you, I looked at that. I'm not sure why, but the author does not divide it out. And normally we would by synthetic or long division, but the author does not divide it out. They do look at this bottom part and say, what's going to make that denominator 0? If x was what? 4. So you have to say x cannot be 4 because we cannot divide by 0. So you do have to put an exception on there. But that's as far as the author goes. So you can check in the back maybe on some odd ones, but I don't think they divide it out. Okay. Okay, those are 4 operations: add, subtract, multiply, and divide with functions. Okay, put a little separator here. The next part is on what they call composition of functions. And I think you did some of these, but we're going to go back and review. Compositions of functions. Okay, and they will usually give you 2 functions. And a composition of a function is written f of g of x, and that's one way to write it. And you always start with the innermost group. You do the g of x first. Some authors write it this way. And that little circle is still read f of g of x. I had somebody come back one time and say they were studying fog and golf. And I'm going, fog and golf, write it down. They wrote that down. I'm going, oh, we were studying compositions of functions. You don't read that fog. Don't read it fog. Yeah. Okay, and the other way, if I did a composition g of f of x, and you always do the innermost, just like order of operations, you do the innermost group first. Some authors write it this way. To me, I kind of prefer this method of writing it, just because I think that's how I learned it. But either one will work. And I'm going to go through a couple of examples for you. So let's say I give you, you're given f of x is x minus 5, and g of x is x squared plus 2x plus 3. X squared plus 2x plus 3. And let's say on this one they ask you to find f of g of negative 2. Okay. Basically, when I do this, I look at the innermost group first. So basically you find g of -2. Don't even look at the f function. So you just find g of -2. So substitute -2 in to that function. Everywhere you see an x, running out of room. Okay, so g of -2. And you have to be real careful. -2 squared, -2 times -2, +4, plus -4 plus 3. So g of -2 is 3. Okay, so for this part of the problem, you can substitute g of -2 is 3. So substitute that in for g of -2. So now you're going to find f of 3. So everywhere you see an x, you're going to substitute in a 3. So f of 3 is -2, and that is your final answer. I said it a couple times, but I didn't write it down. When you're doing compositions, do the innermost group first. Okay? It's like order of operations. If you have more than one grouping symbol, do the innermost group first. Okay? Let's try another example like that. Everybody okay with that one? Okay. Let's try another example. Say I gave you f of x was the function x plus 3. And g of x is the function x squared plus x minus 1. And I'm going to work two parts of this. First, I want you to find f of g of, let's find f of g of 2 again. Okay. So do the innermost group. Find g of 2. So g of 2, right, everywhere I'm substituting in a 2 up here. So I have g of 2, 2 squared would be 4, plus 2 would be 6, minus 1 would be 5. So g of 2 is 5. So that means for this, you can substitute in a 5. So now you have f of 5. So now into the f function, substitute in a 5. So f of 5 is 8. So for the f of g of 2, the final answer is 8. Okay? Do the innermost groups first. Now let's turn it around. Let's find the g of f of 2. So this says innermost group. Do the f of 2 first. So everywhere you see an x, you're going to substitute in a 2. So f of 2, I guess we already had it over there. F of 2 is 5. Now substitute in g of 5. So everywhere you see an x, you're going to substitute in a 5. So you'd have 5 squared plus 5 minus 1. So that'd be 25 plus 5. That'd be 30 minus 1 would be 29. Okay, so g of f of 2 is 29. So you're always going to get the same answer? No. You got to work the innermost group first, okay, and then go from there. Okay, the last part. Everybody okay on that before I go on? Okay, last example. We're going to change it up. Instead of actually giving you the function in terms of a formula, they're going to give it to you in terms of an ordered pair. Okay, so if you're given f of x, a set of ordered pairs I should say, and it's a set, so you need to use the set notation. I'm going to do this by example. Say I give you the ordered pair 2, 6, the ordered pair 9, 4, 7, 7, and 0, -1. And g of x is the ordered pair 7, 0, negative 1, 7, 4, 9, and 8, 2. Okay, and let's say I want you to find f of g of x. I think the easiest way to do this is just to look at it. You're going to go to the innermost first, g of x. So look up here for a minute. In the g of x, 7 is mapped to 0. Okay, everybody watch. 7 is mapped to 0 in the g function. Now take that 0, go up to the f function. 0 is mapped to negative 1. So 7 is mapped to negative 1. Okay. Now look at the g function. Negative 1 is mapped to, let me do this where you can see it. Negative 1 is mapped to 7. 7 is mapped to 7. Negative 1 is still mapped to 7. Then 4 is mapped to 9. 9 is mapped to 4. So 4 is mapped to 4. You follow what I'm doing? The author makes it pretty complicated and writes out a lot of it, but I think you can just do it by sight. Okay, on the last one, 8 is mapped to 2. 2 is mapped to 6. So 8 is mapped to 6. Okay, now let's turn it around. What if I did g of f of x? So that tells you to start with the f of x first. So start with the 2. 2 is mapped to 6. Yeah, 2 is mapped to 6. 6 isn't in there, right? Can't map that one. Okay. Keep going. 9 is mapped to 4. 4 is mapped to 9, so 9 is mapped to 9. 7 is mapped to 7. 7 is mapped to 0, so 7 is mapped to 0. 0 is mapped to negative 1. Negative 1 is mapped to 7, so 0 is mapped to 7. Get the idea? Main thing, start with the innermost group first. Start with that. Okay? And then just follow the mapping. Okay. Any questions? Okay, there should be a few columns on the iTunes U. Okay?